But what we can also start to identify is that we've got this division here, that while this is the cell processes and this is the sulf, this is the cell part of the sulf, whereas this is the sulf-sulf, and so this is the middle, sulf-mercury. And similarly, sulf-sulf, mercury-sulf, cell-sulf. So we're being able to identify these sort of qualities of these elements in finer detail. And so what it's saying here is that the chemistry of our nerve sense system is actually based on aluminium phosphate, very strongly. And whereas the chemistry of our metabolic system is based in sodium chloride. Now, Steiner goes on further and gives this very interesting reference to the way the brain works with the metabolism. And as I said earlier on, he really makes this point that whatever's going on in the head, there's a direct correspondence to something in the belly. And he talks about the back brain, the middle brain, and the forebrain being in relationship to our stomach, our small intestines, and our large intestines. And so when we look at the brain and we look at the functioning of that, we've got sodium, magnesium, and aluminium. Now, if our sodium is whacked out of shape, we get bipolar disorder. And we use lithium, which is the element just inside, to treat that. If our magnesium is whacked out of shape, we get epilepsy. And if our aluminium is whacked out of shape, we get dementia, Alzheimer's. Whereas what we've got over here in the metabolic system is the only place we find chlorine in our bodies in our stomach is hydrochloric acid. And you actually use sodium chloride to balance the chloride with the hydrochloric acid in your stomach. And when we go to the small intestine, this is the place where we digest proteins using sulfur chemistry. And when we come to the large intestines, this is where we get the gall and the spleen, substances that help us break down fats. And they are phosphorus chemistry. So this is just sitting here in the picture. Now, the interesting thing that he does say is that in the back brain, this is our perceptive brain. So this is where we're just sitting here and the information's just coming past you and you're registering it or not. You could just be going past and you're just seeing it as an image. But it's like, okay, you're getting what I'm saying. But for you to comprehend it, for you to be able to make it a rational, objective sort of thought, you have to bring it to the forebrain. And to do that, you need phosphorus. You've got to have phosphorus to be able to incarnate the ego enough to actually make the comprehension. And when you do a lot of rational thought, you actually, in your urine, the phosphorus level goes up because you're doing so much thinking. And so all of these are all Steiner stories out of the medical lectures. They're just fantastic. And so here we go. This is it. It's just sitting there right for us in this picture. So when we put it all together, there it is. Now so far we've just talked about how these elements work in the physical body. We can then see how they work in the etheric body, the astral body, and the spirit. At that point, we have totally done the periodic table of elements. So, there it is. The question was, now what?
Now what? Yes.
We start to use these things. Because one of the things that's going on at the moment, that I'm not quite sure if people are fully aware of yet, is there's a bit of an epidemic of insomnia taking place around the place. I suspect it's coming from the Roundup that our food is being drenched in at the moment. Do you know that all of the wheat, and therefore probably all of the grains that are being grown now in the Western industrialised nations are ripened by Roundup? Because what they do is that they're getting paid on the protein levels of the wheat. And so they spray nitrogen over the wheat a month or so before harvest to up the nitrate levels, which mathematically become protein. And so that will stop the plants from ripening, the nitrates. And so they spray Roundup on the plants to ripen them. And of course we get rid of all the weeds at the time that make it nice for us to harvest.
Those grains won't germinate.
Oh, well, they may not.
I was speaking to a grain farmer and he's whitening his peas with, and I said, but they won't grow again. I know he said if we're keeping them for seed, we don't spray them.
Yeah, that's right.
But we're allowed to eat them.
Yeah, this is the point. And there we go. They're not actually ripening, they're desiccating them. They're just burning them off. Then, I heard the other day, of course, we have this wonderful revolution in no-till farming, that we can go in and we have ground and we spray off all the grass and then we just sow into it. But look, that grass gets sweeter because, of course, glyphosate is this hyperactive phosphorus process. And so the phosphorus process is involved in turning carbohydrates into sugar. And so whatever carbohydrates are in the grass, and the longer you leave it, the better, all of that will be turned into higher sugars, and therefore the stock will love it and do really well on it. So we'll feed it off to all of our stock before we no-till. And Marion told me the other day she has a friend that at the meat works they can't save the livers, the kidneys of lambs anymore because of the Roundup toxicity in the kidneys. So this is going through all of our food, all of our grains, and of course Roundup ready soybeans, all over them as well. So our food chain is being drenched with phosphorus. And so what this is saying, I think it's probably better if we go back a picture so that we can actually see this stuff. So what it's saying is that we're getting hyperactive phosphorus. So we're being kept in our front brains. So we're thinking all the time. So when we wake up at night, we're thinking. So what we've got to do is actually get back to our back brains, which is sodium chloride, and then we will sleep. And so I've been doing this, all these people. We're using all levels, actually. And it's been a very good experiment, because I experiment on myself, because I'm my own best reference system. I can tell what's going on. And it's fascinating that the sodium chloride, while it works, you can wake up in the morning with this is homeopathic, right? And there's no salt in this remedy. But I can wake up in the morning and I get salt taste in my mouth. And you sleep well, there's no doubt. So I tried the potassium bromide, and that was, being in the etheric, much softer. It was like you didn't, it wasn't as harsh, but you had a really nice sleep and you want to sleep. That's the interesting thing. You can be quite wide awake and take this, and within about 10 minutes you actually will go to sleep, and then if you wake up in the night you want to go back to sleep. You don't want to think. And I've done the same with this rubium iodate, but I found it's the astral. So the astral activates stuff, and it also tends to be acidic. Wherever it works, it gets a bit acidic. And I found I woke up in the night with quite an acidic stomach. So I've gone back to the potassium bromide. But all of them work. All of them will bring about sleep, but in a slightly different way. And so in the morning, if I feel the need, which I don't necessarily, you can then take some aluminium phosphate and throw yourself back into your front brain and off you go. You're back. So the point is, we can start to identify how these elements are all working and therefore start to use them in a much more practical way.